In Western philosophy, we use things like logic and science and mathematics as kind of our preconditions to understand the nature of reality. And these are kind of the big questions of what's real and what's true and what is good. But I wonder how people in the Eastern world look at these kinds of things. And to give us kind of a unique perspective, we've invited Balajied Nongrum to come and talk with us. Balajied, you have a background in science and in philosophy and in the study of Christian theology. Again, we pay great attention to math and logic and science. They're kind of the tools that we use to unlock the nature of the world, the nature of reality. How does an Eastern worldview, a more mystical worldview, how do they relate to these kinds of things?
If you really look at the whole idea of how does one gain knowledge about reality in that part of the world or in that philosophy, it is interesting that at the end of the day, when you look at the different approach that they have, it can be reduced to just simply one, and that is intuition. Intuition is a way that is basically looking inside rather than looking outside. So basically, if you really look at Shankara's philosophy as well, you would find that he would talk about intuition that ranks in the highest category, then comes logic, and then the conceptual and the experiential knowledge. But among all these three categories, he would probably look at intuition as something that is more important. The reason is because with intuition, it gives you access to being one with the divine. And that is why when given this as the backdrop, you will notice that knowledge, logical investigation using your mind does not play a very important role as such. And no wonder if you really look even with regard to the relationship of science as such has been only a pursuit in terms of curiosity, but that worldview has not given birth to anything such as a scientific enterprise as such. So I would say that intuition is far more important in comparison to any other way of gaining knowledge.
So this spiritual intuition, this kind of mystical awareness of our relationship to God is very different than kind of the rational categories that we have in the West. And certainly Judaism and Christianity were the religions that kind of gave birth to modern science and affirmed it as a powerful way of knowing the world. So would you then say that for most Hindus, logical contradictions or conflicts between, or apparent conflicts between science and religion, those things are not nearly as relevant or as important as they would be in the West?
I don't think that would be significant enough to consider from that perspective, because if you really look at the intrinsic understanding of this philosophy itself, it is quite contradictory in nature.
Okay.
In the sense that Shankara himself would it's very famous. In fact, legends has this to say that while Shankara was teaching philosophy and he was teaching the whole issue of evil and suffering, and he basically says that evil is nothing but Maya. Reality itself is Maya. It's an illusion. There is nothing real about it, but it is an illusion. In fact, legends has this to say that when he was teaching this, he was sitting somewhere in the banks of the, in one particular river. And as he was teaching, it seems that a wild elephant came running against, towards them. And as the elephant came, and it seems Shankara was the first one to climb up the closest tree. And then followed after him was the student. And so when the wild elephant went away, they came back, and then the students asked Shankara that, you have been teaching us that, the reality is nothing but illusion, everything is Maya, but then why did you run? And then Shankara said that, he said that, who ran? And no, when the wild elephant came, where is the wild elephant? And so you see that, it is an outright denial itself. So what is interesting to me is this, that you see that at one hand, they try to make sense of the universe. They try to make sense of things that is outside. But on the other hand, there is also an outright denial. A denial. So which is a contradictory in nature. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the whole epistemology from that particular worldview, take for instance Shankara, in fact, he has denied and rejected Buddhism, but it is on the basis of one. So in a similar manner, he goes on distinguishing between one worldview and the other, and then at the same time, while holding onto that unique epistemology of saying that everything is an illusion. And if everything is an illusion, then how is it that you are able to qualify it and to describe? So you see there is an intrinsic contradiction.
So there is, in one sense, a denial of logic, but yet they appeal to logic in order to judge and adjudicate one worldview against the other. In a situation like that, Balajied, then does spiritual experience trump everything else? Is that the ultimate appeal, that this what you've described earlier as this spiritual intuition? Does that stand above all other authorities like science and logic? And
no, I think that very often a lot of people who subscribe to that philosophy, I find that they can't deny. There are certain things that that they go through in life. They can't deny reality.
Right.
And so it is just so impossible. It's so difficult to even, you have to reconcile between these two things. So on one hand, you hold that kind of philosophy, but on the other hand, you have to live life. You still have to, you have to still move on with life. And so I think that this is a constant battle that goes on. But what is unique from a Christian perspective is this, that while you look at this philosophy, Shankara would say, from a philosophical point of view, there is this ultimate reality that is unknown. But on the other hand, there is also that denial of the subjective reality where you live on a day-to-day basis. But from a Christian point of view, I find that God is not only ultimate, objective in that sense, but he's also subjective.
yes.
And so I think at the end of the day, it is not only that epistemology that comes only from a spiritual point of view, but there has to be something that needs to bring both the physical as well as the spiritual together. And that you can find only within the Christian worldview and no other worldview.
So we might say the laws of logic are stubborn things. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very good.